What we'll be covering today, it's kind of a catchy title here, Heading Off the Analytic Zombie Apocalypse, also known as AZA. As you can tell, we've got a practice lead that's pretty creative and also has a sense of humor. So we're hoping that that will keep you engaged. We're super excited about this presentation. So just a few logistics. The presentation is roughly about 35 minutes. Then we're going to save the tail end for Q&A. We think that that's the good stuff. I say this every time, so those of you that have attended previous webinars, I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but we do think that that is where the dynamic conversation gets really good. And also, we're going to cover just a little bit about data source here in the beginning, just so that you have an understanding of who we are and why we know so much about data governance. So next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, my name is Deborah Linger, Partner and Vice President of Sales here at Data Source Consulting. And your keynote speaker today is Grant Sutton. He is Director of Data Governance and our Data Governance Practice Lead. He brings over 20 years of experience in data governance and even more years of experience in enterprise data management. It's a space that he's been working in his entire career. So very excited to have him presenting today. Next slide. Okay, so a little bit about Data Source Consulting. For those of you that haven't met us before, and I know that some on the call are clients or prospects that we've had meetings with previously, we are a consulting firm headquartered here in Denver, also offices in California, and we focus specifically on enterprise data management exclusively. It's what we do. So enterprise data management would include data warehousing, big data, business intelligence, all of those things. And we provide both strategic types of services, which I would put our educational webinar series in that, helping you set up a strategy and get prepared for your data initiatives. But also underneath that umbrella, you'll find roadmaps, assessments, program management, project plans, vendor tool evaluations. And with data governance, we offer assessments as well as stand-up programs that address both people, process, and technology, because as we all know, it takes all three of those components. Then we also provide implementation. Those are the doers, right, that implement some of the recommendations that we make. They also supplement internal teams, because a lot of the clients that we work with, you have established teams, and you're looking for enabling your teams to carry these types of efforts forward, and we absolutely understand that. So we work very collaboratively with internal teams to get these projects off the ground, delivered, and delivered successfully. Next slide. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Grant Sutton. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Grant Sutton. If you've been part of the webinar series to date, the first two ones, you may see a theme in terms of how to get started, get interest, show value from your enterprise data governance program. It's great to talk about, and we can certainly talk about at any time and in future webinars about more of the details of execution and things like that. But unless you can get it off the ground, unless you can sell this within your own organization and get the support you need, you're not going to go very far. And so we've had webinars so far on selling strategic data governance in a tactical world, and we've talked about executive attention span disorder and how to deal with that. And today we're talking about one option for practical option for getting started and possibly showing great value from your efforts that you might not have thought about. So we'll talk about what the analytical zombie apocalypse is. I have to say it right up front, I am a zombie novice. I am not an expert nor deeply steeped in the lore, but we have Zen, our little zombie down in the corner there, sharing little bits of zombie facts throughout the presentation. So we'll talk about then how data governance can engage and help head off the analytical zombie apocalypse, pun intended, and why that's going to be worthwhile for you doing in your data governance role. And then, of course, as Deborah mentioned, we really want to get to your questions and have some discussion as we go forward. So what creates the analytical zombie apocalypse and that transformation? In a healthy, normal reporting and analytics group, as I've seen over the years, first thing people do is make sure they understand the request. What is this person asking for? What are they going to use this data for? Then, more often than not, they have to go out and wrangle that data, integrate it in some form. Sometimes even when there's a data warehouse, there's an additional source of data that they need, that they need to bring into the picture. They may cleanse it based on the requirements of the requester. They're going to create the actual analysis or report that's needed. They'll actually do the analysis on it. So they're going to take what they know, what they've seen in the data based on their experience working in that area, do some analysis, and then present that to the requester. And that's going to give you your best shot for reliable results and good insights, because they take the time to understand what's asked for and then to present that to the requester with all that. We all know that data can have all those wonderful idiosyncrasies and warts and challenges that are, if not properly presented, could be easily misinterpreted, and somebody can go off and very quickly make a very bad multi-million-dollar business decision. So what happens to change this? Well, of course, as we all know, oftentimes the people who are requesting this information don't seem to think that the laws of time and space apply to them, and so they literally think asking for it yesterday is a very real possibility. And if not yesterday, well, then they sure want it as soon as you can get it, and they're very anxious to have it. That starts to put a squeeze on the group. The request backlog starts to build up. We've got just more and more data is becoming mainstream, and there's more pressure, if you will, on management from not only sometimes within the company, but just culturally, as data becomes more mainstream and analytics are talked more about in the mainstream media, to to leverage data more, and so they make more requests, and that backlog starts to build up. For the same reasons, expectations are also higher. They want to do more. They want you to do more sophisticated analysis of the data. Whether they, sometimes your requester is well versed in the disciplines that they need to really analyze the data and draw worthwhile insights from it. Sometimes they expect the reporting and analytics group to do that for them and basically present recommendations. But again, the bar is being raised. Business and data changes. The rate of change in business seems to only be accelerating. It used to be that, especially in, kind of large, what people would term traditional companies, it was pretty much the same year to year. And you could expect the same thing. So the report that served you well last year for the last 3 years was pretty much, going to serve you well for the next, 3 years to come. But as businesses are disrupted, as they become more, as they start to take more data in and feel responsible for doing more with data, this actually causes changes in the business itself and in the systems where that data is coming from. And now all of a sudden, the reporting analytics group, instead of the system they used to know and be able to pull data from, now have to learn, figure out the new system, what the equivalent data is in that new system. And by the way, the requesters want some of that new data because that's one of the main reasons they invested in that new system. And the reporting analytics group may or may not be that familiar with it. So there's additional pressure there. And then finally, resource challenges. With all the, with all the great things happening to push organizations to become more data-driven, to have and engage more competent analytics professionals, it's hard to find those people. And as many of you are already aware, even if you find someone who's has the skills, part of the challenge is they don't know your data. They don't know all those quirks in your data. They don't know all the rules that you need to do to apply to integrate it properly, to make sense of it, what to filter out, to when looking at historical trends, at what point you need to call stop and say, this data really is not equivalent. So, and then so even if the reporting and analytics group has budget to grow to try to meet these growing demands, they can't always find the people. And if they do, they're not necessarily productive right away because it takes quite a while to learn the ins and outs of the data, and pile again back up to the arrow on top of that, the changing business and data, and it can be very hard to keep up. All this over time and over cycles, starts to transform what we've seen. And obviously, this does not happen everywhere, but oftentimes we see that we see the zombification of the reporting and analytics group. Instead of understanding the request, they get it. They don't have time to go back and ask those clarifying questions and make sure they're understanding that they're delivering what they need to. They still need to integrate the data. That can just become sometimes a little bit tougher for them, and so they do that. Cleansing data, that's oftentimes something we see just go out the window because the requester is just saying, hey, just get it to me, just get it to me, just get it to me. And instead of creating an analysis and report and performing that analysis, they just a lot of times are doing a data dump and saying, here you go. And they can check it off their list, clear it out of their backlog, and not have the person yelling at them anymore. The problem is, and they'll then notify the requester that it's ready instead of presenting it to them and with explaining all the ins and outs of the data. This leads to risky results with few insights. I should probably say that few insights isn't maybe the right way to say it. The risk of having incorrect insights is way up. People will still continue to draw conclusions from the data, but without that deeper knowledge of the data, they can make, again, very costly mistakes. So this is happening, but wait, there's more. In larger organizations, often we see multiple usually departmentally based reporting and analytics groups, RAG. So you'll see them around different parts of the organization, and again, it can vary from organization to organization, but oftentimes they don't talk to each other. There's that wall between them. Sometimes they're not even aware that the others exist because they're so busy trying to keep their department leads happy with their requests that they don't even often have time to pull up their heads and look around and see who else is doing reporting and analytics. Sometimes they are aware but are instructed, and I've encountered this many times, to not get distracted by engaging with those other reporting and analytics groups, because the whole reason they became a departmental group was to focus on the priorities of that department. And why would you talk to someone else and do that if you're here just for the department? So there's that wall, and so you've got multiple now reporting and analytics groups possibly going through those same pressures and zombification. But wait, there's still more. Requester A comes out of the executive team meeting, and whether it's their area of responsibility or not, they send out all these requests. They'll send the same request, R-1, to groups 1 and 5, and they'll send another request, 2A, to groups 4 and 3. Now, obviously, each group is not aware of what the other is doing. They're not aware that the request went to somebody else. Very often we see the motivation for the requesters is they want the information. Is two primary motivators. One is they want it quickly, and whoever gets there first wins. And so they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket by just asking one group. And the other is sometimes they want to compare and see who said what. And whichever one is more favorable for their position, they will use those results. And sometimes, in fairness, they are looking to compare to see if there's a quality problem or try to resolve it. But those are the motivators we see. So that this happens. But wait, it's not just one person. You've got another requester coming out of that same meeting, and they're sending that R1 request to 1 and 2, and they're sending request 2 to group 3 also, but it's not expressed the same way. So the group 3 doesn't necessarily know that they've gotten a duplicate request from these separate requesters because it's worded a little differently. They're not sure, what it is. So they end up doing that. Even within the group, they end up doing that work twice. Um, so, these redundant requests lead to more, even exacerbate the problem. Even if this multiple requesters weren't sending it to multiple groups, this accelerates it even more. Increases that pressure, increases the pressure to just get it out, do those data dumps, and continue to plow through your backlog. So, if unchecked, there will be an analytical zombie apocalypse, which means that they'll just be going, kind of be, these groups who really do, typically, in my experience, the reporting analytic groups want to do a good job. They want to present their findings. They want to give all those caveats to the data and make sure that their data is being used correctly. But sometimes these pressures just kind of can turn them into these analysis zombies who are just trying to get the stuff through the door and back out to the requesters. So, it is worth noting that if you're on the call and you work in Haiti, this is actually a crime, and you can read about that and what our little zombie friend says there. But the management gets frustrated because they're starting to see these different results from different groups. It oftentimes comes together at the top. There's the high risk of ill-informed decision making. The reporting and analytics groups, I can't tell you how many times I see it, they just get demoralized because they want to do a good job. They know that their results are being misused in the organization. But, they're just being told, hey, that's the responsibility of the requester to figure that out. Our job is to get them the data, and they do that. Leads to poor data quality perceptions, which plays directly on data governance. And it costs a lot because you've got all these people doing a lot of redundant work. And of course, it's inevitable in any situation like this, the guilty are sought out and the innocent are punished. So, okay, that's scary and maybe even familiar to you. But how's that a data governance problem, you may ask? You may just kind of say, boy, it's too bad for them, or run away, don't let any of this stink get on me. Or if you really see the zombie thing coming, you might want to stock up on food and ammunition. But think of, as you're leading a data governance effort in your organization, you need to think about all things that touch data. And think about what is the primary window of management has to the data. And it is through these reporting and analytics groups and what they produce for them. Upper management is not typically involved in keying orders into the order entry system or working directly in the GL. Their interaction with the data is primarily through the reporting and analytics. So this is something very close to those folks who when they think of data, they're thinking about these groups. You ask yourself, hey, am I having a hard time communicating the value of data governance? Is there maybe an opportunity here where obviously if all these people are asking so much for this that it's to the degree that it's wearing down these groups, there must be a lot of interest in it and hence value. Also ask yourself, if not you, who? Who else has an enterprise data perspective to understand and solve this problem? The reporting analytic groups, even when there's sometimes, I've been in situations where there's all these departmental groups and then there's like an executive reporting team as well. And they kind of tend to cover across those departmental groups, but they often have a somewhat strained relationship with the departmental groups because they don't always agree with the changes that the executive reporting group makes to their data, to their results. And in the process of, sometimes it's just a challenge of integrating with other results from different departments. But who else is better suited to do this? Who else could approach these reporting and analytic groups without being a threat? And coming from an enterprise data perspective, from the data perspective, not a department or having an agenda to advance in terms of presenting results in a particular way or showing one department favorably over another. If you're in that enterprise data governance role, you're in a unique position to approach these groups and solve this problem without being a threat. Sometimes they can't approach each other because they look at each other with suspicion, and they're being asked to, they have that wall up. But so you're in a good position to help make that happen. And then, could data governance use a win? If you're trying to show, and maybe you've been doing it for a while, and you have this nervous feeling that management doesn't feel like there's any real demonstrable value that you've shown, this is an area where you might be able to jump in and do something. So, first thing, step up. Be that person who can approach these groups without being a threat and blow up the barriers. Make inventory of the different reporting and analytic teams across the organization, and begin facilitation. Now, again, because you're coming at this as a neutral party interested in an enterprise perspective of data, you may think that, oh gosh, they're just not going to engage or whatever, but I can tell you from experience that because they are in this situation, because they are overloaded and have more than enough work to do, they are often very open to talking about opportunities to work in a more sane manner. So, step up, take down those barriers, and get them talking to each other. Just go out, get to know them, talk about what each group is doing, and then maybe start to bring them together. And again, it's going to vary. The exact approach is going to vary based on your organization, your culture, and how many of these groups you have. But I've done this before with over 18 different reporting groups, and brought them together and got them marching in the same direction. Oops, sorry, wrong direction. There we go. So the kind of four key strategies to focus on and present the zombification that are going to both benefit data governance and the reporting and analytics capabilities. We'll talk about each of these, but focus, work smarter, balance delivery, and grow the people. The last one, grow the people, is going to be mostly in the domain of the reporting and analytics groups, but you're going to be very much, from a data governance perspective, can be very much engaged in facilitating and helping the focus, work smarter, and balance delivery all come together. So let's go look at each of these in a little more detail. Focus. Metrics that matter. Sometimes people just ask for everything and anything. If you can, either through an effort that you're aware of that's already going on or as part of your data governance efforts, you're going to try, you have an effort on performance measurement or anything like that, or feel you need to start one, start to try to get that clarified. Reduce the scope of standard metrics needed. Now, for ad hoc requests for different things, that's not going to help you a lot. But there's a lot of standard reports and metrics that really you can show fairly quickly, or if you talk to these reporting analytics groups, they'll often tell you. They say, hey, they keep asking for this. It's wrong to use it for that purpose, but they won't listen to us. Right? And from your position, as you get more evidence to back that up and everything, you can often help be the voice of reason and get people to stop asking for things that are not only taking up the time of these reporting teams, but also potentially steering your organization in a bad direction. The focus in your enterprise data framework we talked about in the earlier two webinars, and again, if you don't have those or weren't able to attend, they're available online. Just reach out and we can make sure you get access to those. And focus on the metrics. What that's going to do is help define stewardship and accountability by part of the organization, those metrics. And you can start to lay that out and say, you guys are doing, reporting on this. You're spending a lot of time reporting on it. There's already agreement in management that belongs over in the other part of the organization, and they're doing it as well. So would you like to get that off your plate and have them share with you what they're doing? And again, people are just happy typically to see some relief there. And so while the political stuff doesn't magically dissolve, but you start to have these conversations and you can make headway. So, you start to look at your stewards and how they relate to these reporting and analytics groups, and then you're working with business leadership to gain agreement on the right areas to steward these metrics. And again, you're also focusing down on, instead of 100 metrics, maybe you're focused down to 40, where metrics that really matter. That will impact the request backlog and expectations as well. So, work smarter. One of the lot of different stuff about zombies, causes and depictions of zombies. One element links them, as our friend says, they all have compromised brains. Don't be a zombie in this respect. Help both yourself and help the reporting teams to work smarter. Simple things, obviously people talk about cleaning up a report inventory all the time. Seldom do they do it. Sometimes the additional, and just even within the departmental reporting group, they'll talk about doing that, but again, they're so swamped. Sometimes the additional value and ability to really cut down reports by looking across groups from an enterprise perspective is the trigger that's needed to make this seen as a worthwhile exercise. You can identify those redundant reports across groups and then stop producing them. And again, even the ones that are automated often takes time and attention from these teams to keep them going, or when there's a problem and they don't run correctly, even though no one's looking at it, they still need to go address the errors in the process. You can start to look at opportunities to share resources. Sometimes a reporting group will be slow at a given time of the year, or a particular season for the company, or just at a certain, they're busy, they're hair on fire for the first week of the month, and then things slow down for them. There are opportunities to share resources and have cross-train people and have them both on the data and tools, often different tools used by different groups. And you can look at opportunities. Again, it's a win-win for these reporting groups. They're going to be able to benefit and do it and maintain their service levels to their current departments, or even improve them. And this is going to help. So working smarter will help with the request backlog, the expectations, and the resource challenges, because you're starting to cross-train and have more of a flexible resource pool to spread the work around in. Balanced delivery, request management. We showed that scenario of the different requesters coming with the same request. Look at an opportunity. Chances are your organization already has some sort of IT or other request management software, or if you're using SharePoint or whatever you're using, the process, the form already exists, and you can just put that in, leverage that to do combined request management for the group of RAGs, reporting analytic groups, to help sort out and stop the redundant work before it hits the group. This will also give insight on what people are really interested in, that can feed your data governance efforts, that can feed a data warehouse effort or big data efforts, whatever it is. So getting that enterprise view on the data that people are interested in is very valuable, as well as sharing, balancing load across the groups and cutting out some of those duplicate requests. The key thing here is that the local leaders, those departmental leaders, have to understand that they still set the priorities for their groups, right? That's a political hurdle you most likely won't get over if you don't make that clear to them and show them how that's going to work. So that you're going to be able to do all this, and that the idea is that they'll end up getting more, each department wins, and they'll end up being able to get more out of their own group, as well as leveraging resources from other groups, but that they set the priorities for that group. So if it's determined to go to that group, if your central request management process as it goes to that group, that leader still sets the priority. Again, depending on your culture and how you're set up, you may be able to, negotiate something a little different there, but just keep that in mind, as that can stop you in your tracks if you aren't aware of that. And support, so as I mentioned, this also, getting this information also benefits the enterprise data teams, whether it's data governance, data warehouse, whatever it may be. So again, this obviously helps the request backlog, expectations. With this request management, you're typically also going to implement some sort of service level agreement so that people have a shared understanding of when they can expect their results back. And it's just, whereas the department may not have felt they had the resources, experience, or power to implement a service level agreement type arrangement, as you bring this together, that makes that more feasible. Finally, and this is a thing that helps with the resource challenges. Grow the people. Standardize the roles. Pretty much every organization I've seen in these departmental groups, the people doing essentially the same work have widely varying titles, as far as HR is concerned. There's no common job description. There's nothing like that. As you standardize that, it makes it easier to hire people because HR can get it, your recruiters can get it. Makes transfers across groups easier, which some people may say that's a bad thing. I don't want my people to transfer. But it's funny, people often want others to transfer into their groups. They don't expect anyone to lose one. But it does set up this more of an enterprise resource pool for this. And it also provides an internal career path. With these scarce resources who are hard to find and for whom it takes time to learn your data and be truly effective, you don't want to lose them the first time a great job offer comes around from somewhere else. And usually a departmental group is too small to really have a career path. That's not what the department's there for. The department's purpose is not reporting to analytics. It's operation or supply chain or finance or whatever it is. And these people are often, off in a corner with these different skill sets. But as you do this, you provide that internal career path for them. And again, this is something usually the groups themselves will work out with some HR help, but making them aware of this, helping them catch the vision of this is something certainly you can help with. So I'll let you guys read this afterwards when you have the actual presentation. But almost as a disclaimer, I could see the lawsuits coming. We did all if an actual zombie apocalypse happens and somebody says we're going to sue Grant Sutton and Data Source Consulting because we did all the things he said in his presentation and it didn't help us at all. This is there to cover that. Okay. So this is from randomfacts.com or I think .com on the web, but just some good guidelines for I think gleaned from many zombie movies about what to do to survive a zombie attack. So back to our world. So was it worth it? It seems like, wow, there's a lot of great stuff that I can see where the reporting analysis groups would like this, but why is this good for data governance? Did this help me? So think back on all those reasons you thought about getting reasons to get involved in the first place. And then think about it. Well, with the reporting analytics groups, I've built solid relationships. So, well, first of all, you have supporters now because you've shown your willingness to come and work out a win-win situation with them for what you're doing. And they're much more likely to collaborate as data governance evolves and requires them to contribute something to what you're doing. And again, as we mentioned before, they are and are seen as the data people in their different parts of the organization. You're looking for their management to support your enterprise efforts. If they hear from what they perceive as their data people that, yes, you're doing good things and deserve their support, that's going to help a lot. You've also made this tangible, real. A lot, we tend to talk as data governance professionals a lot at an enterprise level, and as we talked about in earlier webinars, sometimes people have a hard time relating to that in their job. By engaging with these local groups, it now becomes much more real for them. And guess what? These people know about the data issues that you're going to need to tackle in data governance. So you've done this, you've carried it, and you've demonstrated in a very tangible way, because all people say, they're getting better, faster results from their requests. They're not seeing as many, they're not seeing the conflicting results anymore, and they feel much better about the data. And you can say, you're welcome, and show that value for them, as well as the cost avoidance work you've done in keeping them from having to grow those teams. So you have that credibility now. You've addressed symptoms. Sometimes we're so intent on working on root cause that we forget that there's value in addressing symptoms, especially in this case where it moves us to position us to better deal with root causes. Because a lot of these reporting analytics groups are actually being encouraged to cover up the symptoms, to massage the data, to take those things, to clean it up for presentation. But they have to do that every time they do it. And they're going to appreciate and support you in your efforts to clean things up at the source. Again, as I mentioned, you're showing real value, cost avoidance, and speed to insight, which is oftentimes much more valuable to people than the headcount they didn't have to hire. And then you've started actually, if you do this right and thoughtfully, you've actually started building your data governance foundation through practical application working with these groups. You've started, if you haven't already, you've been able to flesh out and evolve your enterprise data framework. You started because you needed to be able to say what group should report on what data. You've worked, made huge strides in data stewardship and accountability, and data governance. You started to pave the way for data governance and management processes by showing the importance of dealing with with data, at an enterprise level, and that you have a very clear example for everyone to follow and understand there in what you've done with these departmental groups and how you need to look at it from an enterprise perspective, why you need those governance and management processes. One example which is the request management piece you helped implement. And you may say, well, that's not really data governance, that's project portfolio management or request management or whatever, but it played directly into better data results. And so you can use that as an analogy for some of the things you may have a hard time articulating otherwise to get people to understand. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Deborah, who will be covering your questions. Just 2 questions to get you started. I'm sure many of you are asking, as it went through this presentation, when exactly is World Zombie Day? And that would be every October 8th. And and of course, when is Global Information Governance Day? That's the 3rd Thursday in February. Now, are the zombies ahead or behind governance on the calendar? I guess it depends on your perspective. The more important question is, will you be ahead or behind the zombies? With that, we'll turn it back over to Deborah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Grant. Really appreciate very informative presentation. Thank you. I did have a few questions that were sent in advance that I did want to take you through. However, I just want to let the attendees know that on the right-hand side, you'll see a box entitled Questions. We have everyone muted, so just type in your questions there, and we will make sure that we get as many answered as possible. So I have a question for you. This one is actually from me. Grant, and that is, you mentioned enterprise data framework. Sometimes I think it's confusing as far as what does that mean exactly. So can you elaborate on that just slightly, please?
Sure. That's we touched on this in actually I think both earlier webinars. But by that is what we do is we put together just a one-page 2-level mutually exclusive hierarchy of subject areas across the enterprise. It makes it very, it sounds simple. It's not, we're not trying to draw a conceptual model or a logical model or draw relationships between subject areas or anything like that. It's just a listing. Two hierarchy levels deep one obviously very high conceptual level, like financial data, and then within that you may see things like GL accounts or something like that within finance. This is extremely useful in many respects in terms of, especially for establishing data stewardship and who's going to be responsible for what. The very fact of having it on one page really helps the organization understand and see the organization from a data perspective. They have org charts, they have high-level functions, they have process maps, but nobody, unless you show it to them, they're not going to see the organization from a data perspective. So if you want to know more, please reach out to us and be happy to take you through some of that. It's also covered some at the high level in the earlier webinars.
Thanks, Grant. Next question for you. What if within a company the VP or SVP is perfectly happy with today's infrastructure, today's reporting organization, and they're happy to add more teams in order to get more granular data or get the reports that you need? What is your advice for how to convince them to implement something like this that's more streamlined and efficient?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes, the interest isn't in efficiency, it's in results, right? And, they figure if they put more people on it, they'll get more results. So it depends, on exactly what the stance is and what the relationship you have with those people are. But if you engage with the leaders of these reporting analytics groups, they're likely to understand the issues and challenges. They've tried to hire good people, and they have with varying degrees of success, and they know they're hard to find, and they also know it takes a while for them to be productive in knowing your organization's data. So sometimes it's using them as the channel to communicate with those VPs. Other times it's it may just not be the right time if they're not feeling that pain. If they're if they seem perfectly comfortable doing that, it may not be. This may not be the best approach for you. I mean, would it still be better? Would it save the company money? Would they get better results? Sure. But again, if there's not that pain there, they may not be willing to listen.
Thank you. These next two questions kind of go hand in hand. So let me read them both. One is that sometimes people could have a hard time imagining these reporting groups collaborating together, right? Because sometimes people can be very protective, very turf, protective, if you will, of their reporting and their current infrastructure. So, and this kind of caveats into the next question too, is in your experience, do you notice and find that there is a shift in a more collaborative attitude from stakeholders as well as from the reporting organizations?
Yeah, I've been focused on this for quite a while, and again, treating this symptom as a great way to show value for your data governance program. But that collaboration sometimes, I guess what I'd say is yes, but it may not be immediately apparent. I've been in organizations where people have actually warned me off, saying, "Hey, these guys are, produce data that's in disagreement with each other all the time. They are always pointing the finger at the other group. You're not going to get them to collaborate." But and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's not going to happen. But more often than not, I don't take that at face value. I go and talk to the leads of the groups. Talk to them, listen to them. Listen to them about the challenges they're having. Listening to where they're being asked to go in terms of beyond what they're doing today. And as we do that, they're concerned. They're concerned about their reputation. They're concerned, these leads are concerned about their reputation, their ability to deliver value. And they, as I mentioned before, they want to do a good job. And if they see this as, again, a win-win, and just talking them through that, again, sometimes it's not immediately apparent that they're going to be collaborative, but as you take it to them, and make sure they understand and be an impartial party in this, and that you're not favoring one group over the other. They will often end up going to their bosses and saying, we need to. This makes sense. It's a win for us. It's we need to do this. Again, it doesn't always happen, but more often than not, if you make the effort and lay out the arguments, because this is so widespread, you'll see that collaboration, evolving. There's sometimes bumps along the way, but if you stay engaged and manage that with an eye toward, realizing that this is going to have a direct impact on how data is perceived in, in the organization, it's worth your time.
Okay. So thinking back to one of your slides where you had the brick wall in the middle and the reporting groups around the outside, I've been in organizations where they have over 200 analysts, and they're all manipulating the data differently. They're getting it from various sources and sending it back out, and with very varied results, right? And so if in those organizations, if a data governance program got initiated, what do you think is a realistic time frame, given the state of the environment today, to roll out something like this and start to see results, right? How long before it's streamlined? How long before people are leveraging the same data? How long before you can actually maybe take some of those analysts and have them do more predictive analytics as opposed to just working with today's data, right? They can really start to leverage their environment towards more proactive types of capabilities. Can you answer that? What would be a realistic time frame?
I'd say, keep, scope your time frame, manage your scope, there we go, to hit a target time frame of no more than 6 to 9 months. So, if you have 200 analysts in maybe, 20 organizations, you may not decide to try to do them all at once. You may look at those and see where is the most value, where could I provide the most value, the first, 3 or 4 groups that I'm going to try to facilitate this, break down these walls and make this happen. And, keep in mind that, again, sometimes we're victims of our own enterprise focus, and we think if we haven't solved it all, we haven't solved it. But if you do that, and keep in mind that, to keep these parties engaged, these reporting and analytics groups engaged, and to be able to show something, meaningful, you can't, let it just go and go and go. So I picked 6 to 9 months, head for 6 as much as you can, and if you can, that's great. It'll depend on, the willingness of these groups to step up and participate. But do that and realize that then you will have an example to show to, that will serve all the benefits that we talked about for your data governance program, as well as an example and a case for bringing those other groups, the other 14 groups or whatever, together and do, kind of repeat the exercise and bring them into the fold.
Great, thank you, Grant. Another question for you, just, brass tacks, like for our audience, like if they're very interested in this, and if they see a burning need within their organization, aside from, hiring a data source or a consulting company like ours to come in and help them with this effort, what is something that they could do today, this week, to get something like this going, to get it off the ground? What would you recommend would be a good first step? Go introduce yourselves.
Go introduce yourself to these reporting analytic group leads. Listen to the problems they're having. Tell them, introduce yourself not as the person who's going to try to get this collaboration across reporting and analytics groups, but as someone who's focused on enterprise data governance. And they're going to have plenty of pain. I can promise you, whether it's understanding the data they're looking for, or trying to have it, know where to find it, know about data quality, or have someone address data quality issues that they deal with all the time. They will be happy to talk to you. And as you listen to them, then you can, have the details you need to start to form a strategy, figure out if you can do it, you want to carry that forward yourself or bring in some additional help as kind of a neutral, outside party or whatever. So.
Okay, last question. In your experience in doing these data governance initiatives, what percentage would you give to the challenge when it comes to people, process, or technology? What percentages would you put in those buckets as far as where you see the challenges to get resolved so that they can have an efficient and effective data governance program?
Off the top of my head, I'd probably say 70% people, 20% process, and 10% technology.
Great, interesting. That's very different from what I anticipated. So, okay, next slide, please, Grant. Want to thank everyone for coming and joining us today. We're going to be at a couple of different conferences. If you guys are looking for more information, here in town we'll be at the Informatica User Group here in Denver, Colorado, near our headquarters. We'll also be in New Jersey, in Jersey City, at the Data Governance Financial Services Conference. I believe that there's still time to sign up for that. And then we will also be in Chicago, teaching at Enterprise Dataversity. And then in the winter, we'll be at the Data Governance Winter Conference in Delray Beach. So hope to see some of you at those conferences. If you do see the data source folks, please stop over and say hello. We'd love to meet you face to face. And coming up soon, we will be having our next webinar, which will be on metadata management as it relates to master data management. And Dalton Serbo, I don't know if anyone is familiar with that name, but he's written multiple books on MDM in the multi-domain space. So very highly experienced consultant, very excited for that. That's going to be Friday, September 13th at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So hope to see you then. Thank you, everyone.